It's time for your next favorite episode of the Integratedness Podcast with Jason and Jolene.
All right, we are back. Another week of integrating your greatness and all that jazz. I'm Jason.
And I'm Jolene.
How you doing, Joe?
I'm good.
Yeah?
Yeah, I'm good. You had like a slow brain moment there, and I was like, ooh, Jason's feeling a little rusty today.
It's been a busy few days with more to come, so yeah.
Yeah, and we're like really kind of gearing down in the year. Like it's wild when we look at how much time has kind of peeled away a little bit, and I think, naturally we sort of go on vacation in our mind a bit. We're wrapping things up. It's like this part of the year is like Thursday afternoon, Friday morning of a week, you know?
Oh, totally. Yeah. It totally is. With like, because this is out on the 18th. So next week being like Friday, and then the week after that is Saturday, and then Recovery Day is the beginning of the new year.
Yeah, it's so true. It's wild. So with that, something Jason and I, when we were going through topics and different things, we were like, oh my God, we have not talked about money.
We've never even touched on it, I don't think. We talked maybe a little bit about financial independence, you know what I mean?
And how socially appropriate is that? Money
Yeah.
becomes this like taboo topic. I know there are couples who have no idea what each other's financial situations are. And then we look at how in some partnerships, we just like throw it all together initially. Like I know, in my previous partnership, it was like that, where everything just became joined. And it's very interesting, what our relationship with money is and what the world around us requires us to have as a relationship with money. So how does this impact all of us? It significantly impacts our mental health, because at the core of finances in our lives is safety. And when we look at things from a nervous system perspective, from our ability to think clearly, when we feel calm and safe and secure, money is the root of that. If I don't have money to feed my kids, to pay my mortgage, to do the things that I want and need to do for my family, I perpetually walk around in a state of essentially underlying panic and worry, right?
Huge. Same. Like I grew up with a mother who grew up during the Depression. And so money was like everything. And her mom, Grandma Newell, previously Grandma Chamberlain, were very tight with them, like super tight, yet they were also all about keeping up with the Joneses, like keeping up appearances. So there's like this weird juxtaposition of like concepts, right?
Yeah, I think we have desire, right? When we live in a place of lack and restriction, we have desire. And this is where we want to treat ourselves, or we'll buy frivolous things, or we want sometimes the stuff, right? And back in that time, debt wasn't really something people acquired because interest rates were so high, right? Like mortgages were so low, but interest rates were high. So debt wasn't something you wanted to lock into for a long time. And because of the Depression, like you weren't really guaranteed much. So that changed the way people sought careers. It was very focused on through like industrialization and stuff, pensions and those kind of jobs. And we've reflected on that lots, you and I, because you and I have broken away from that mindset of the glass ceiling in the safe and secure pension and benefits job, right?
Yeah, and doing something for like 30 years just because of that security.
And because they send you a piece of paper that says you can work for 4 more years and then get this chunk of money. Like we think that that's like this like agreement we have to have, right? But that's because our like parents' generation grew up really needing that sense of security and structure based on where they came from that their parents didn't have. But now when we look at, the different variables and the different streams and what debt means and how easy it is to acquire debt or get a credit card or cover this or cover that, you don't really have to go without nowadays like you may have had to before.
Big
right?
Time.
It's wild. So right now, I just want you to think about the topic of money, how money impacts your life, where you have felt like you have not had enough of it, where you've needed to be creative to get, sources of it, how, on a scale of 0 to 10, how financially secure do you feel? Like my whole life, I was always very appreciative that my mom taught me how to manage money well, right? I had a job very early on. I paid for my car. She was able to pay for some things up front, like my insurance. So then I paid her every paycheck rather than spending more money paying ICBC monthly, right? I loved having opportunities like that where I could save myself a few $100s and learn the value of payback and, where she was able to extend some of those things for me. And I had a really healthy relationship with money. My previous partner had a very unhealthy relationship with money, and debt and overspending and burning the hole in the pocket was a huge issue. And it was very interesting to see how that changed my relationship with money. And eventually, after years and years of that and taking care of a family, and then when I started to get overloaded with like my twins and, you know, managing all of that part of my family life, I remember when my relationship with like my confidence in money started to change, because I was in control of what I could be in control of, but there was like this leak at the bottom of the boat that I wasn't in control of. And that really made me fear money and debt and not having enough of it, and become controlling of it in a way. And I lost that belief of like, I've got this, I will be able to take care of whatever comes my way, because there was other variables that shook that up. Does that make sense?
It does make total sense. Total sense.
So then when I became a single mom, that was my biggest focus. And that's why, you know, when I made that decision and my career showed alignment for me, it showed alignment in ways that I was like, I can do this by myself, and I can do this by myself, because that was a big like part of my decision, right? Is I need to be able to do this by myself. But, you know, as a woman, I really want to highlight that in the world we live in right now, I remember I've referenced this before, but I saw this public speaker kind of clip somewhere, and she said like 1% of, what was it? Like 1% of women will actually like exceed $100,000 or something.
It's very, very low.
It's a very low amount, and the majority of the rest of them, and even then, they live in a place of fear that they won't have enough. And that really hit me, because it is true. You know, at the end of the day, if we were to look around, like I naturally carry an unease around how secure I am for my kids.
Yeah.
Even though I'm responsible in my career, I'm making good choices, you know.
You see every paycheck as it comes in, and where you're sitting, where your balance is at. You know what your expenses are. You know you can do it. You know you can do it.
And that's why I've been running this rat race and switching into my own practice again, like, you know, cutting down my overhead, because that's exactly the monthly struggle that I'm in terms of like what's demanded of me and where it comes from. So that is a big piece of, and then like how present I'm able to be as a mom, a friend, a partner, because the minute that financial buzz is rolling in the back of my head, I disconnect from people, because I just get like this really tunnel visioned focus of like, oh no, okay, next month this is coming. I'm already thinking about that for Christmas, taking 2 weeks off, spending money on Christmas presents. And I started to go into this like little hole these last, you know,
I do the same thing.
Previous weeks. Yeah.
Exactly the same thing.
Yeah. So tell a bit about your story, Jason, and what the wellness component of money is for you.
Oh, it's been, there's no wellness to any of it, right? Like, and because of what I grew up with, even though the family clearly had enough, right? But it was always driven in that there isn't enough, and you should always save, and you don't do anything fun with it, and you don't, because you got to save it, because what are you going to do when you're like 65, 75, right? And then the crux of that, what became very interesting, after my father passed away, Mom inherited everything. She was very focused on making sure all of his investments came in. Like, she got rid of all the houses that he owned and all this stuff, so there's this big chunk of cash. Never mind that had we kept those, there would have been a total income coming in.
Right.
But anyways, but she always led on that there was never enough, right? Never enough. And that even when Jess and I got married, we should have a prenuptial agreement that, you know what I mean? Like, it was just ridiculous, which really pissed me off. And then when she had her stroke and I became like basically the power of attorney, I saw how much there was, and it was, everything I was told was bullshit. There was more there than anyone could ever spend. Wow. Which was ridiculous. And I got really angry. Because it's like you had that pressure your whole life about there's nothing, there's never enough. And it's taken me years, even though now, like, that's why I can do what I can do. Because I know if she died, we sold the house. There was a place at the shoe shop, we sold that. So no mortgage, which takes care of a boatload of your monthly worries, right?
Yep.
Can own our vehicles outright, not payments, anything like that. Makes a huge difference. But there's still in the back of my mind, right, that there's not enough.
Yep.
Or that you got to be careful because it could all be gone. Even though what I bring in every month, when I compile everything together, is more than enough for Jess and Griffin and I to get by.
Totally.
So this past weekend, like, we're recording this late November. Like, I went to a literary conference that I was invited to speak at and everything, which was great. And then right after that, I went to Vancouver I do a solo trip every year. Usually I go into the woods, which is economical. You go
Yeah.
into the woods,
Yeah.
right? It's economical. But Ryan Holiday, who's the Daily Stoic, was speaking in Vancouver. So there's no way I'm going to miss that.
No shit.
No way I'm going to miss that. So I flew because it's November and it's shitty on the roads. I got a hotel. And instead of just sitting at the back, I got a VIP ticket where I got to go into a Q&A with him beforehand and all that stuff. So I did all that, that's not cheap. None of this is
good
cheap.
for you, Jay.
But I did it. But for me, actually, and it was all great. It was all great. But the icing on the cake is I wandered into a comic book store that I used to go into when I lived in there. And inside was an issue of Godzilla #1 from 1977, which I had when I was a little kid.
Yep.
And didn't take care of it because I was 5 in 1977.
Yep.
So it was there for sale for $95 and I bought it.
Yay!
Which I never would have done that. Like years ago, I never would have. I'd be like, no, it's $95 for an old comic book. But that's like, I'm a huge Godzilla fan. I had that comic as a kid. I'm not going to read it because you don't want to wreck. Like it's going to stay in its little Mylar seal case in a room. But I did it. And that was a battle.
Wow.
That was a battle to get to the point where I would do that. Because I knew I could afford it.
Yeah.
That's not even a question.
Yeah. And I guess, when money and pleasure come in here, right?
Yeah.
And this is a part of like restriction. And, when we look at, I always talk about money and love energetically operating on the same frequency. If we were to look at frequencies of energy and in this lifetime here, they're very similar. And when I work with people in my office and in therapy, those are the things we talk about is there's often a parallel between our relationship with money and our relationship with love and, sabotage patterns and receiving patterns and any of those kinds of things. And one of the things that really helped me was Kate Northrup. I've referenced her before in terms of the egg wisdom theory and things like that. But anyway, she has a book called Money, a Love Story. And that one, like money has always been something that I can handle the short, like the smaller stuff, the micro stuff in the accounts, but I don't understand investment stuff. It really overwhelms me. And anything like bigger picture like that with money puts me in like almost like a weird dissociative state. Like I totally check out. And, it's funny because that's totally Kevin's jam and that's his realm. And I go like deer in headlights when I want to talk to him about those things and I can't. I even am actually getting emotional talking about it, which is funny because I think that that's probably learned from my family's relationship with money. Because my mom and dad, I remember they had an investor and he had them take a big risk with some of their stuff. They remortgaged their house and my mom wasn't comfortable with debt. She just wanted things paid off. But this was that like smart debt to acquire other things.
Yep.
And it wasn't insured in my dad's death. And she was told that it was. So that fucked her over for quite some time to try and pay that mortgage when my dad was gone. So there was a lot of fear around investment stuff, specifically because of that reason. So anyways, I did this like money, a love story little, I needed it to appeal to me in a less scary way. And that a love story, of course, perfect, right? The romantic in me. But it was really beautiful to go back and look at your stories of money and where fear was and where lack was and where control is and any of those things. And I know that really helped me in forging my business in a certain way and being able to expand outside of what my mom's limitations are with money, because I know there's always kind of that voice of reason that was pecking at me in the background sometimes. And I could see where like her fears, anytime I would suggest something like, a rental suite or things like that, I know like those, her fears would just like project right onto me, right? So it was really cool to go and undo some of that because we've talked a lot about that generational impact of the depression and, all of the different versions of the world we live in and how we need to essentially kind of shift away from that. So that is a really great book that if people are interested, specifically women, honestly, for that one, in healing their relationship. And I also have a really amazing accountant who has, I've actually kind of helped him. I was like, you need to make like a program of this for entrepreneurs because I wanted to make tax time easier for me. I wanted to see what my business was doing during the year, but I wanted to keep it organized. I didn't want to hand it off to a bookkeeper because I still wanted to be in control and see what was coming and going out of and where my expenses were. But I wanted to be able to just like hand everything tidy at tax time and not have to sit there and go through receipts and shit like that. So anyways, he has this amazing spreadsheet Infinity Finance is who he is, guys. His name's Daryl, and he's awesome, and I text him with questions all the time. But anyways, I punch into this spreadsheet every time I bring income in, every time I pay a cell phone bill. I'm in that spreadsheet every day,
Yep.
and it keeps me on top of my money every day. I'm touching it. It's no different than my day timer that has my vision board all over it. I touch it every day, essentially. So I'm constantly interacting and nourishing my accounts, if that makes sense.
Yep.
When we ignore them, it's like our relationships, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like if we're not going in and checking the boxes and crossing the T's and whatever, it can get neglected, right? So that keeps me on top of the business part of things, which is essentially like 95% of my finances, really. Like so much of your business and personal roll into each other, right?
Yeah.
So that has been so profoundly helpful. And I have referred so many of my colleagues and people newly into an entrepreneurship business and that kind of stuff. I've referred them all to him because I like having my hands on that still. I didn't want to delegate that part out yet.
Yeah, which is, I mean, if that's what you need to be comfortable, that's the way to go, right?
Yep.
Like I call him my money guy, Ron Bergson, and he just takes care of all of it.
Yeah.
Right? I don't even think about it, and he just
Okay.
checks in. We check in once in a while, and if I have an idea, and we invest in certain things, and just that's just works for me, right?
Well, I have investors somewhere else, and
Yeah.
this is a guy I trust quite a bit, and actually he's expanded in his business, but always kept me because he knew where I came from, what Chad and I had been through, and has always just kept me, which is really nice.
Yeah, that's cool.
And they're good to me. But this is just specifically for like accounting and tax purposes sort of thing. But yeah, it's nice when you can hand all of that off,
and just
right?
don't want to think
Honestly,
about it.
and that's the part that I would love to get to. I just, I did that at a certain point, and like I said, in my previous relationship, there were times where that stuff just, the lack of trust and things not done properly.
It's tough. You need to have that trust with someone, right? And it's and it's hard. Like because I'm like you. As soon as it comes down to talking like budgets and all that, my brain just checks out. And it's one of those like I remember my mom was always like, "Well, you can get interested in it," and I'm like, "Actually, you can't." Like it just, I don't think that way. I don't give a fuck about any of it. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I don't. Like I think it's actually like money and finances is just it's bullshit to me. It's like everyone should. It's almost like I'm a big proponent for the universal income. And if you want to make more on top of that, just go do stuff to make more on top of that. I'm a big proponent of that. So I think it would solve a lot of problems in our world, right?
Yeah.
So it's good. And Jess is really good with money and stuff like that, which is great. And she kind of understands the balance of it all more. So I leave a lot of that kind of, when it comes to trips and stuff, it's like, that's on her.
Yeah, and for me,
fine.
I don't have a problem with the budget part. I can talk about that micro stuff all the time, right?
Yep.
It's the later on stuff that's not tangible right now because I didn't feel like my present was safe. So it was like, don't even talk about 20 years from now.
Yeah,
You're fucking up the right now.
Yeah, right. And right now is more important than 20 years from now.
Yeah, for me, I've never really needed a budget because I've known what my limits are and I play within it.
Right.
but somebody fucking didn't, right?
Right.
And that was the other thing is I thought we'd be all good and then, a vacation fund would be spent on a hidden credit card or something.
Yeah.
So it was like, okay, great. Now everyone else suffers because
that's brutal.
So I have no problem. And it's funny because I have always been grateful that like I really don't have to go to a grocery store and pick and choose which items we can and can't have. I'm strategic about how I shop, but I haven't really had to restrict our family that way, which is I feel very privileged for. And I could probably do much better if I stuck to some kind of budget, but I'm grateful I don't have to.
Yeah,
right?
it's nice to just kind of
Whereas
get
it was
what you
very
want.
weird to have to actually put a budget on someone and be like, but if you don't have that, you can't spend it. Like these are all the other things that impact that, right? Yeah.
Yeah, like you can't go out for dinner if you want to go buy a new pair of pants. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
That's just a weird example,
totally.
but it's true though.
Yeah,
It is
it's
true
got to
though, right?
come from somewhere. Yeah, exactly. And you have to kind of prioritize and triage that in a sense of need and want and, pleasure and necessity and all of those things. And I think we need the balance of both. And that's sort of this like boomerang with money. And a lot of people get avoidant about money. And then a lot of people are really confident with money. And, it can make or break relationships. It can make or break your current state of life. You get into a place of desperation, of chasing it, of, when you have a bad relationship with money, it will show up in many areas of your life.
And it can destroy you. I've seen it do that to some people. Just destroy completely.
And sometimes you have no idea because here's the thing. People who go into extreme debt and live very luxurious lives.
Oh,
right?
There was an article, I think it was in the Vancouver Sun. It was like two doctors that lived together that couldn't survive on like more than 100,000. They couldn't. They each made more than 100,000 a year, and they're just scraping by. But the journalist went and broke down what house they live in, that they have a nanny and a cleaning person and 2 Audis. And it's just it's like, holy fuck, guys. Like, come on, think about that.
I've had this discussion with people, right? And they were like, well, I don't know about this, and I don't know if I can that. And I said, you have like a $100,000 motorhome you could sell. You have 3 other houses you could sell. Like, you're not going to go without. You will just need to make some sacrifice in order to make this work. But yeah, if you need to take that time off from your job to do this, then you can adjust your nanny hours. Yeah. You can get rid of 3 properties. You can, it was wild what this person thought that they still needed to maintain. And I said, no, that is privilege. That is not necessity.
Yeah.
And yes, you would like to keep that, but there will come a time where you're going to have to decide potentially which one's more important.
Yeah.
And if your mental health is more important, then maybe that extra house just goes for now to buy you an extra, I don't know, probably a year or 2 off of fucking work. I don't know.
Yeah, whatever you're trying to achieve in your life. You know what I mean? Yeah, because I can't. The concept of that, I can't. Like Jess and I always say, like, it'd be neat to be able to hire a cook just to make breakfast.
Oh, man.
Wouldn't it?
Yeah.
But I mean,
or a cleaner.
But it's not fucking realistic. Like with what we
everyone,
make.
yeah, and recognizing, we speak from a social, like a certain socioeconomic status, right? And I think people can kind of sort of gauge where that is. There are people that fall below that, and there are plenty of people that fall way above that, I think, right? And, I always locate myself in a certain kind of area of that I'm just like, oh yeah, like I could, things could be, I tell people all the time, like money can buy you a good life.
Yeah.
It absolutely can. Like, and money does not buy happiness, but it can buy you a good life. It can buy you time. Mm-hmm. It can buy you assistance. It can buy you opportunities. Absolutely. And anyone who says that's not true is full of shit.
Oh yeah, big time.
Because the reality is, in this world, a cleaner, a cook, all of those things can buy you and your family more bonding time potentially, or this or that. It can also disconnect you if you use it in the wrong way.
Oh, for sure you can.
But I can think of a ton of things that money could buy me and my family that would make my life easier to be able to roll out for them better.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
That's
like, fuck, my girls would love to have their own bedrooms.
Well, for sure, right?
Oh, my God.
And one day when they're older, one can go downstairs and one can be, it will come.
Yeah.
But it'd be nice.
Well, that room's full right now.
Right now. In a few years, maybe that'll change, right? But it's, and I think an important part too, the whole money happiness equation, is to be content and appreciative of what you do have and what it does get you. Because it's really easy, and it's happened to me and it's happened to other people I know where, all right, I want to be able to make this amount of money because then I can do this and that and can afford this and that. So you get there. But then it's like really easy to go like, oh, but now if I made this much, I could do that. And then you get there and it's like, oh, but if I made $2,000 more a month, I could do this.
Yeah.
And what you need to do is realize, no, I make like 50 grand a year and that's enough.
Yeah.
And I live comfortably and I have all this stuff that I can do and I don't need more than that. And that's, you got to become really comfortable with what you do have. And people, as long as you could be a dishwasher making $1,200 or $2,000 a month, but if that's all you need and all your wants are taken care of, who cares?
Yeah. And,
who gives a shit?
Living within that means, right? And often we have to really think about this. And there's times of our lives where that changes and adjusts. Like I remember we had to cash in our RSPs to pay off our truck when I went back from maternity leave with the twins because daycare was $3,000 a month and we needed to free up current money to pay those payments. So we had to pull from investments to cut down on monthly payments. And we didn't overspend. We didn't eat out. I did everything on like my own. We didn't go on extravagant holidays. Like I didn't know how people could go on these vacations to like out of country and stuff. I was like, how did people do this?
Line of credit.
I guess. And,
right?
and you know what? I know a lot of people and that is sort of how they did it too, right? And then some people really, they have the cash, they pay it, and that's their privilege in life, right? And where they're at with things. For us, I remember being at different stages like that where it was like really discouraging to be like, fuck, to get through the now and not screw us more later, we have to pull from something that was supposed to be there, but thankfully it was there.
Yeah.
There were so many times where I was like, oh, thankfully I had that saved up, and I guess now we don't have to go into debt to pay the debt. Like,
yeah, exactly.
And, because some of these, like I said, some of them were surprises, right? But in my current life right now, some of those things of like, it's funny when you said, if I made more, I could do this, I could have that. Do you know what that is for me? Because I'm doing that all the time.
Yeah.
It's time off.
Time off, yeah, right?
Because I'm constantly like, how do I make more money so I can take that Friday off for that hockey tournament? So I can take because we're out of town every, like, many weekends, right? So it's like, how do I, because then I'm spending more money being out of town, but I'm taking another day off of work. And I'm like, if I made more money on the Monday, Tuesday, then it would cover and break even for that weekend. Like, I'm doing that every fucking week, Jason.
Yeah. Yeah.
And then now I'm doing it for Christmas, right? Like, okay, daycare's closed for the 2 weeks. What does that look like? And, you know, what's the expenses versus the income, right?
Big time.
And I think that's the reality for so many people, right? And if it isn't, that's lovely. Like, that is fucking lovely.
Could you only imagine?
Oh, and honestly, and even it sounds like there's a bit of shame and judgment there, but it's not.
No.
Like, it's about really healing that and being like, that's fucking awesome. That's ideal. I wish everyone could have that.
Yeah.
Right? And, you know, that's also part of where, like, generosity comes in for me. And when I'm able to give things back, you know, Christmas Amalgamated is something I support every year because I couldn't imagine not being able to give my kids the kind of Christmas or a form of Christmas that they would want. Like, I just think there are some things in life, I don't care what kind of decisions people have made in their life, you get a get out of jail free card at that time to just fucking give your family, yourself, your loved ones what you need. Like, there has to be reprieve at some point.
Yeah.
We shouldn't have to suffer all the time, even if we made shit decisions.
No, it's very true.
Yeah.
It's very true.
Yeah. So, you know, for me, one of the things that I work with clients on is when they want money, but they are reluctant to receive it. And I battle with this all the time because I also am very fierce and independent and have purposely gotten the career that I have and I'm very responsible with my money. It's really hard for me to be in a place of receiving because for me, and it's weird, like I challenge my own belief system here, is I don't want to be judged as like a gold digger. I don't want to be judged as somebody who doesn't have her own value that way. And so that's something that I am often resistant to in some ways. I don't want to be perceived as spoiled or things like that, which is funny because that's an old belief growing up. I remember feeling that way about certain family members that had more than our family. And it was like money and greed were linked.
Okay, yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
When really it was like, no, they had good educations, they worked hard, they had government jobs or whatever the things be that, you know, or maybe someone did have an inheritance or maybe somebody ran their own business, which was risky back then, right?
Hugely
to be a business
risky.
owner
Yeah.
back then. So I really started looking at that. And I mean, that's something that's really ingrained in us, even in terms of judging other people, right? Placing ourselves, oh, that must be nice, or, you know, any of those kinds of things. So those are the places that often block me from receiving that or like attracting it in a sense, right?
I think for women, there's more of a perception of that.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? I don't know very many men who won't accept some financial gift. Oh, thanks so much. You know what I mean? Like,
Yeah.
I think it's different. You're looked at differently.
Yeah.
I think. Like, because women, there's been that, you know,
And
the
I
whole,
think that's like a lateral
stereotype.
discrimination against like women hating on women and really like judging. But I mean, really, when we're trying to be, if we're looking at that masculine feminine dynamic, that is something I want to be able to sink into is like, what are things that could make my life easier so that I can be more present and be more compassionate and be more fluid as a woman, because I know, like, even just with Kevin and I, if I'm stressed about money and tasks, I shut down as like a sensual partner. Like, I'm just not soft. I'm not the same kind of accessibility. I become rigid. My conversation is limited in some ways even. I'm just less accessible, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. So for me, those are pieces where it would be nice to be able to have some things taken care of so I can free myself up to be more of those things, because I literally am like the man of the household in my household.
Yeah.
You
Yeah,
know?
exactly. You're doing both roles.
Yeah, absolutely. And that, and even with my kids, like having to do that, it takes away the ability for me to be softer or do certain things. So I feel like I've cultivated the best balance I can right now in my life to be able to be kind of both of those right now.
Perfect.
Yeah.
Well, that's good. I found like I'm getting to the place where I don't struggle so much with the whole money thing either. And part of it is just accepting it. Things are going to go a certain way or not, right? You know what I mean? But just be smart with it
and
on
that's
a day-to-day basis.
Yeah, that's something that I'm glad you brought that up, because I do think, like, for myself, because I've always had a good relationship with money and knowing I can manage it well, I always knew I'd be okay. I never put myself in a place of danger where I didn't have a safety net. The problem previously for me is that my safety net would get used by somebody else.
And that
was really hard. So I know I'm okay, right? Like it's hard when, now the safety net that I had put for something is like, oh no, I need to use it over here for this. And it's like, well, gratefully it was there, but fuck. Now,
Come on,
now I got to build that up again.
Christmas or a trip away.
It was Christmas. Yeah. So, and then it was also the government wants my prepaid tax money.
Yeah,
so I'm like, fuck, of course, right? Like forgot about that. And it's all necessary. It's all a part of the world, right? And the choices that I've made for the way that I work right now. But yeah, it's some of those things where, I do think that some people really don't believe it'll be okay. And some people are like, you know what? Fuck it. Like when I met my ex, he was honestly at that point, like he had things repoed and lots of stuff because he was like, bah, I'm done. Fuck it. I'm too far down.
Wow. Couldn't imagine.
Yeah. So, people do get like that. Like I used to support clients all the time who would need a short-term fix, like for probably a relevant reason. They'd go to fucking Insta loans and boom, you are handcuffed for months in those places.
They're terrible.
Because
terrible
the interest
places.
is like 50%. It's wild, right? So recognizing, like life throws us into these like places, and how much do you pay up front for longer term investment like education, right? What did I acquire in student loans and debt in order to have the education and life I have now that I eventually paid off? But it was still like, that's a lot of money up front. That fucking sucks to be in debt for something. So there's it's a house, right?
Oh yeah, and that's one of the most terrible. That is the most terrifying purchase I think I've ever made. Was this house here?
Your mortgage, right? A car payment. What are the investments that help you move forward in life, right? And sometimes you weigh the pros and cons of all of that and what's necessary. Do you need the brand new car? Like I always buy used because that's not financial. Excess that I need to spend money on, right? As a newer car, like go a few years older and you're saving thousands really is what it comes down to for me, right? Maybe one day I do have a goal of having a new car because I want that. I deserve that, right?
Oh, for sure.
But until then, I'm okay with less than that.
My truck is the first new vehicle I've ever owned.
Yeah.
Right?
See,
I've had it 9 years already.
I remember my parents talking about that. My dad had one vehicle pre-kids that was custom from the factory, and he talked about that thing all the time. After that, he bought used and repainted them, rebuilt them. He created them himself, right? They were always unique. But that one straight out of the factory, we always heard about, right?
Well, yeah, because to do that, it's a huge expense right out the gate, and you never get it back.
Yep.
Right? But it's nice to have that one thing, is completely, no surprise, hopefully, knock on wood, is going to come out and bite you in the ass.
Yeah.
Right?
And these are the places where, we are all working hard to be in this lifetime. We're working hard for our futures and for our present. I think current day generations have a bit of a different philosophy. They plan less for the future and more for the now. And we'll see where that rolls out in 40 years, right?
Oh, big time.
It may look very similar to what the Depression looked like before, right? And nobody has old age security in a sense because some of these people aren't paying into government funding.
Not at all.
That then will secure them in pension life. So what does that look like 40, 50 years from now? Right?
I won't be around to find out, unfortunately. That bums me out.
So some of our younger listeners, keep in mind. But yeah, the economy changes how we are able to live and the decisions that we make, right? So, and again, politics and all that stuff. But for today, we really want to stir up and see how you guys feel talking about money. Do you feel confident? Do you feel positive, negative, neutral about it? Where has money kind of like been a bit of a bone in your ass there? Well, I don't know.
That's a whole new terminology. Bone in your ass.
It's like a pain in the ass, kind of a bone in your thigh. I don't know what I was thinking there, but
bone in your ass.
Going to bad places, I think. So think about what your response to this conversation is. And it's also a very intimate topic. Not a lot of people want to talk about their money. And then that was a whole other thing in like the dating realm too, is I was like, oh my God, this is like, I remember my mom being, very protective of her assets after my dad died and being really worried that like someone was going to come and take that. So dating was off limits for so long for her, right? And those are also very realistic pieces too in this lifetime. So yeah.
There's all sorts of things related to the monies.
Yeah. And right now, people are in like a weird money crunch because of the Christmas season. And we roll into January looking at money differently. Do people have credit card debt? I don't. I don't go into debt for things like that. I don't like to go into debt for vacations because I know mentally I won't like really enjoy myself. I like to have most of it paid up front or know that there's not something I'm coming back and running backwards with, right? It's already happened. Why should I be paying the cost of it after the fact, right?
No, very, very valid point.
Yeah, so for me,
point.
that's a pleasure thing. Like I pre-plan so that it doesn't steal from the pleasure and the joy of the moment. So think about some of those things. Not everybody has that. And some people are like, yeah, it's okay. It's fine. It'll get paid off like in a couple weeks, no big deal, or a couple months. And it rolls into the next thing. Just notice what your flow is with that. Notice what your maybe financial goals for next year are. If you've never really substantially thought about this and you want to dive into it, next year is a perfect time to kind of start. Come up with a 12-year plan. Come up with, what do I want to make each month and what would I want to save for? Find one thing, two things that you want to save for and start there, right? Kids do this all the time. What are you saving up for?
Yeah,
Yep.
big time.
Yep. I have lots of different accounts that I'm always shuffling money in between. There's lots of different strategies. Some people go for the jar strategy with cash, right?
Yeah, just put it away like $1 a month or whatever.
Yep.
That'd be pretty, you wouldn't get much in a year, but whatever.
But yeah. And then something else Kevin had told me is like money doubles every 7 or 10 years or something like that. So that's also like for the long-term investors. Those are things like $10 a month, $100 a month. What does that turn into later on, So remembering some of those things. But we will probably try our best to keep an eye out and share maybe some financial resources. I'd love to have Kevin on our
show
be a good idea.
At
some point. He has this, he's a big money mind and the way his brain thinks is very genius, but he also sort of has a little side project he's working on that is investment related. So he may want to speak to us about that. And it's kind of like investing for dummies. It's a way to get assistance to understand and things like that. So I don't want to say too much, but I think that maybe in the new year and even him being an accountant, maybe some tips around tax time or something.
That'd be really good.
Yeah.
I think we should do that.
Sweet.
And next week, we're coming a day early because it's the holiday season.
You're not going to play us on Christmas Day, are you?
No, we're not. But we're going to have our annual Drunken Christmas episode drop Christmas Eve morning with the return of Shaniqua. I got your ass.
Yeah. Did she have your ass this year? I guess we'll find out.
We'll find out.
Yeah.
Next week.
All
so
right.
until then, I'm Jason.
I'm Jolene.
Ho, ho, ho.
Stay rich.